My name is Daniel Rivers, and I'm 41 years old. 2 years ago, I was living what most people would call the perfect life in Austin, Texas. I had a thriving tech startup, a beautiful wife named Rachel, and a business partner I considered my best friend. Today, I'm about to tell you how I destroyed both of them with a single signature on a piece of paper. I met Jake Patterson when we were both 28, working at a soul-crushing corporate IT job in Dallas. We'd bond over terrible coffee in the break room, complaining about our incompetent managers, and dreaming about starting our own company someday. Jake was tall, charismatic, with sandy blonde hair kept perfectly styled, blue eyes that sparkled when he talked about big ideas, and a smile that made clients trust him instantly. I was the technical guy. Dark brown hair, usually messy from running my hands through it when coding, hazel eyes hidden behind glasses, average build, the kind of person who preferred servers to people. We were perfect complements. In 2015, we founded River Tech Solutions with $30,000 between us and a dream. Those first 3 years were brutal. 80-hour weeks, ramen and energy drinks, poverty-level salaries. But we were building something real. Rachel came into my life during year 2. I met her at a tech conference in Austin where I was presenting on cloud-based inventory systems. She was working registration, and when I stumbled over my words during check-in, she smiled and said, "Breathe, you're going to be great." She was 26 then, with long auburn hair that caught light like copper, warm brown eyes that made you feel special, and this infectious energy. After my presentation, I found her at the hotel bar and bought her a drink. We talked until 2 a.m. She was in event planning, had moved from Houston 6 months earlier, loved live music and breakfast tacos. We married a year later at Zilker Park. Jake was my best man. Rachel looked beautiful in a simple white dress with wildflowers in her hair. By 2019, Rivertech had grown beyond our wildest dreams. 45 employees, downtown office with views of Lady Bird Lake, $8 million in annual revenue. Jake and I owned it 50-50. I developed a proprietary inventory management system that was legitimately better than anything our competitors offered. We had patents in my name, clients who couldn't live without our software, and a reputation for solving impossible problems. Jake was the face of the company, landing big clients, negotiating contracts, wearing expensive suits now instead of his old Honda Civic lifestyle. He'd upgraded to a Tesla and a modern Seahome District apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows. Rachel and I bought a craftsman house in Clarksville with tree-lined streets and a front porch perfect for Sunday morning coffee. Life was better than good. Jake and Rachel got along great, which I loved. She'd come to company events and Jake would make her laugh. The three of us would grab dinner celebrating another closed deal. Looking back, I can see the signs I missed. Rachel dressing up more for company events. Jake knowing details about Rachel's schedule I'd never mentioned. But I trusted them both completely. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was not paying closer attention to our company's financial structure. Jake handled business operations while I focused on product development. I showed up for board meetings, signed what he put in front of me, assumed my partner had my best interests at heart. The beginning of the end started on a Wednesday in March 18 months ago. I came home early, rare for me, to surprise Rachel with flowers after we'd closed a huge Houston contract. I pulled into our driveway at 3:30 p.m. and noticed Jake's Tesla parked 2 houses down. Odd. Jake had told me he had client meetings in Round Rock all afternoon. I grabbed the roses and walked to our front door. It was unlocked. I could hear voices upstairs. Rachel's laugh. Jake's voice. "Rachel," I called out, "I'm home early." Sudden silence. Rapid footsteps. Then Rachel appeared at the top of the stairs wearing a black silk robe I'd never seen before, her hair messed up. "Daniel, what are you doing home?" Jake appeared behind her, wearing dress pants but pulling on his shirt. I watched my entire world collapse in real time. I stood in my own entryway, holding roses meant for my wife, staring at my business partner buttoning his shirt behind her. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. "Daniel, I can explain," Rachel started, but I held up my hand. "How long?" My voice sounded strange, too calm. Jake looked uncomfortable, running his hand through that perfectly styled blonde hair. "Brother, this isn't what it looks like." "Don't call me brother right now." "How long?" Rachel pulled the silk robe tighter. Tears formed in her brown eyes. 8 months, she whispered. 8 months. July, our company summer party, where Rachel wore that red dress and Jake toasted about partnerships and loyalty. I started laughing. The roses fell to the hardwood floor. I just stood there, laughing, while Rachel cried and Jake looked everywhere except at me. "Daniel, please." Rachel stepped down one stair. "Stay there, both of you. Just stay exactly where you are." I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Rachel in her robe, Jake half tucked, our bedroom door open behind them. I documented everything, methodically. "What are you doing?" Jake asked. "Evidence. Texas is community property, but adultery still matters in divorce. Since we don't have a prenup because I trusted my wife, I want documentation." Rachel's face went white. "Divorce? Daniel, we can work through this." "No, we really can't. You've been sleeping with my business partner for 8 months. In our house, in our bed, while I was at the office building the company that pays for this house." I looked at Jake. "Did you plan this? Get close to me, build a company, then steal my wife?" "It wasn't like that," Jake said, sounding sincere. "It just happened." "Things don't just happen, Jake. You made choices. Every text, every meetup, every time you came to my house and fucked my wife while I was working, those were all choices." Rachel was crying harder. "Daniel, I'm so sorry." "But you did it. For 8 months, you looked me in the eye and lied. You let me buy you flowers and tell you I loved you, while you thought about him." I headed for the door, then stopped. "I want you out by tonight, Rachel. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow." "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked. I looked at Jake. "I'm sure your business partner will figure something out." Jake's face flushed. "Daniel, the company, we need to talk." "Tomorrow. My office, 9 a.m. Bring your lawyer." I drove aimlessly through Austin, past Zilker Park where we married, past Jake's old apartment, past the restaurant where we celebrated our first million. I ended up at my office at 5 p.m. Most staff had gone home. I sat at my desk and pulled up our corporate documents. River Tech Solutions. 50% Daniel Rivers. 50% Jake Patterson. Except we weren't equal. I built the software. I wrote the code. I held the patents in my name. Jake was brilliant at sales, but without my technical work, there was no company. I spent 6 hours reading every document, every contract. I hadn't looked at this in years. I trusted Jake. What I found made my blood run cold. Over 2 years, Jake had slowly restructured our ownership, favoring him. Documents giving him more financial control. Subsidiaries where he had majority ownership. Even a clause giving him the right to buy me out at fair market value, determined by appraisers he'd influence. He'd been planning this. Maybe not the affair, but definitely pushing me out of my own company. I pulled up financials. $3.2 million in the bank, $1.8 million in receivables, $650,000 monthly recurring revenue, 3 patents worth $5 to $10 million. Jake thought he could take it from me. I called Richard Chen, our incorporation lawyer, at midnight. "I need every document related to Rivertech structure. Everything. Jake's had me sign in 5 years. And I need a divorce attorney tomorrow morning." "Jesus, Daniel, what happened?" "My business partner is sleeping with my wife, and he's been restructuring my company to push me out. I want to know where I stand legally, and I want to know how to burn it all down if I have to." "You're serious?" "Dead serious. And Richard, don't tell anyone. If Jake finds out I'm building a case, he'll move faster." Jake thought he could steal everything? He was about to learn his biggest mistake. By 8 a.m., I was in Richard Chan's conference room with 3 coffees and 2 hours of sleep. Richard walked in with Susan Martinez, a divorce attorney I'd met at corporate events. "Show me everything," I said. 4 hours later, we'd gone through every document. Susan handled the personal side, what Rachel could claim, how adultery evidence would protect me, how Texas community property law worked. The news was better than I'd feared. I'd put down the entire house payment using pre-marriage savings. Texas could treat that as separate property. Rachel worked freelance with minimal income. With adultery evidence, Susan was confident we'd get a favorable settlement. "She'll get something," Susan warned. "Texas isn't pure fault. But with documented adultery and you being primary breadwinner, we minimize damage." "I don't care about the house," I said. "I care about the company." Richard's face was grim as he pulled out corporate documents. "This is worse than you thought, Daniel. Jake's been very clever." He pointed to a document from 14 months ago. "This gives Jake unilateral financial decisions up to $500,000 without your approval. This creates new shares that dilute your voting power." My stomach dropped. How did I miss this? "You trusted him. He buried it in 70 pages of legal language that looks like standard corporate housekeeping." He pulled out another document. 3 months ago, Jake created RiverTech Holdings subsidiary. This owns your software licensing agreements. You still own 50% of RiverTech Solutions, but actual revenue-generating assets are in this new company where Jake owns 75%. "He stole my company." "He's trying to," Richard corrected, "but he made a mistake. The patents are still in your name personally, not the company's. When you filed them in 2016, you kept personal ownership and licensed them to RiverTech. That's your leverage." My brain started working through it like an algorithm. Jake controlled revenue through RiverTech Holdings. I controlled the underlying technology through patents. Neither could operate without the other. "What happens if I terminate the patent licensing agreement?" Richard smiled. "Then RiverTech Holdings can't legally use your software. Every client contract becomes void. The company is worth nothing." "And Jake knows this?" "He has to, but he's betting you won't do it because it destroys everything you built. Mutually assured destruction." Susan offered another option. "If you prove Jake violated fiduciary duty, you could sue to dissolve the partnership and force a sale. Split proceeds 50-50. "How much?" "Maybe $4 to $6 million for your half, but years in court, hundreds of thousands in legal fees." I shook my head. Not good enough. Jake doesn't just lose money. He's rich enough to survive. I want him to lose everything: reputation, company, future. Like he tried to take mine. "Daniel," Susan said gently, "be careful about revenge decisions." "This isn't revenge, it's consequences. Jake committed fraud, violated fiduciary duty, stole from me. I just want appropriate consequences." The meeting with Jake was scheduled for 9 a.m. at our office. I brought Richard. Jake arrived with a slick-looking lawyer. We sat in our conference room, the same room where we'd planned our future, celebrated our first million, dreamed about changing the world. "Gentlemen," Jake's lawyer started, "we can resolve this amicably. My client acknowledges his relationship with Mrs. Rivers was inappropriate. He's prepared to offer a formal apology and suggest a 60-day paid leave of absence while you process this." I almost laughed. Jake thought he could take a paid vacation until this blew over? "No," I said simply. Jake spoke. "Daniel, be reasonable. What happened with Rachel was wrong, and I'm sorry. But we can't let personal issues destroy what we built. RiverTech is bigger than both of us." "You're right. That's why I'm buying you out." Jake's lawyer jumped in. "You don't have authority to force a buyout." "I'm making an offer. Jake sells me his 50% for fair market value, or I terminate all licensing agreements to RiverTech Solutions and subsidiaries." Silence. Jake went pale. "You wouldn't. That destroys the company." "It would. Every client contract void. You couldn't legally use my software. RiverTech worthless overnight. We'd both have nothing." "That's insane." "Not spite. Business. You tried to steal my company, restructured it behind my back, violated 13 years of trust. I'm responding proportionally." Richard slid a document across.
Offer to purchase Mr. Patterson's shares for $2.5 million, payable over 5 years. Jake's lawyer's eyes widened. This is far below market value. The company is worth that with my patents, I corrected. Without them, nothing. Take $2.5 million or watch it burn.
Jake didn't take the offer. His lawyer convinced him they could fight in court, that I was bluffing about destroying the company, that no reasonable person would burn down their life's work out of spite. They didn't understand I'd already accepted the loss. The moment I saw Jake behind my wife, I knew Rivertech as I'd known it was dead. The question was whether Jake would lose more. 3 days later, I filed 2 lawsuits: divorce against Rachel, with all evidence documented, breach of fiduciary duty against Jake for fraud and partnership violations. But those were opening moves. The real weapon was the patents. I sent formal notice to every client that in 30 days I was terminating Rivertech's license to use my software. Without that license, any company using our platform would violate my IP rights. Jake's phone must have exploded. I was in a South Congress coffee shop when Marcus Chin called, our biggest client, at $2.3 million annually. "Daniel, what the hell? I got a letter saying your software license is terminated. We're integrated across our entire operation. If we lose access, we're dead." "I'm sorry, Marcus. This is a partnership dispute, but I'd license my software directly to you, bypassing Rivertech." "At what price?" I quoted 30% less than Rivertech's rate, plus 6 months free technical support for the transition. Pause. "You're destroying your own company." "I'm destroying Jake's company. Mine will be fine." Over the next week, same conversation with 47 clients. Some angry, some confused. But when I explained I created the software and offered better pricing with direct support, most listened. Within 10 days, 31 of 47 clients signed new agreements directly with me, cutting Rivertech out. Jake called on day 12. I almost didn't answer. "You're destroying everything we built," he said, voice ragged. "No, Jake, I'm taking back what I built. You just happen to be there." "Daniel, please, we can work this out. I'll sell at your price. Just stop." "That offer expired when you rejected it. New offer is $500,000. $500,000? My half is worth millions. Your half is worth whatever I decide, because without my patents, you have nothing. Every day you wait, the offer drops. Tomorrow, $400,000. Next week, $200,000. Eventually, zero. "You fucking psycho." I hung up. Rachel called an hour later. "Daniel, please talk to Jake. You're ruining his life." "I'm ruining his life?" "Rachel, you fucked him in our bed for 8 months. You don't get to call about his problems." "I know I hurt you." "You destroyed our marriage. Hurt is forgetting an anniversary. Which you did was calculated, repeated betrayal." "We didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. Every text, every lie about where you were, every kiss after being with him, all choices. You meant every one." She was crying. "What do you want?" "Nothing. Sign the divorce papers and get out of my life. Tell your boyfriend his company is dying because he couldn't keep his dick in his pants." I hung up. The board meeting happened day 17. Jake called an emergency session hoping to force me out. He'd forgotten I had veto power over intellectual property decisions. I showed up with Richard and 3 inches of documents. Jake was there with his lawyer, plus Sarah Kim, VC from Silicon Valley, and David Torres, former tech CEO advisor. "Gentlemen," Sarah started, "we need to resolve this. Rivertech is hemorrhaging clients. Stock dropped 60% in 2 weeks. The company will be worthless by month's end." "Then Jake should take my offer," I said. David leaned forward. "Daniel, you're destroying a viable business out of spite. This hurts employees, clients, everyone." "This isn't personal. This is about fraud. Show them, Richard." Richard laid out everything: the hidden restructuring, the subsidiaries, the licensing agreements funneling money away from our partnership.
Sarah's face hardened. David looked shocked. Jake, did you restructure without Daniel's knowledge? I did what was necessary to protect Rivertech. Daniel was focused on product development. That's not consent, David said. Jesus, Jake, you violated fiduciary duty. You could go to prison. Jake's face went red. I built this company as much as Daniel. You sold a product I created, I interrupted. You're a salesman, Jake. Very good. But without my software, you have nothing to sell. This is bullshit. You're just angry about Rachel. I'm angry about many things, but my anger doesn't change facts. You committed fraud. Now you face consequences. Sarah looked at Jake differently. The VC deal is dead. No one invests during this lawsuit. Take Daniel's offer. It's $300,000 now, I added. Jake looked like he'd have a heart attack. $300,000? I put 13 years into this and spent 2 years stealing. Be grateful I'm offering anything. 2 days later, Jake's lawyer called Richard. My client accepts $300,000. He wants this over. I smiled.
The paperwork took 6 weeks. Jake sold me his 50% stake for $300,000, 98% less than what it should have been worth. I acquired Rivertech Holdings for $1, since without my patents, that subsidiary was worthless. Rachel signed divorce papers without a fight. She got $150,000, half of what Jake received, poetically appropriate since they'd been partners in destroying my marriage. She kept her car and personal belongings. I kept the house, savings, and retirement accounts. The day the divorce finalized, I ran into them at a Clarksville coffee shop. They both looked terrible. Rachel had lost weight, her auburn hair in a messy ponytail, no makeup. Jake was in wrinkled jeans and a t-shirt, far from his usual expensive suits. They saw me. Rachel looked away. Jake stared with undisguised hatred. I ordered coffee and walked past their table. I couldn't resist. How's the job search, Jake? His jaw clenched. Fuck you, Daniel. Heard you were interviewing at Salesforce. Did you tell him about the fraud? Might come up in background checks. Rachel put her hand on Jake's arm, afraid he'd hit me. Daniel, please, haven't you done enough? I looked at her. This woman I'd loved for 6 years. Married, bought a house with, planned a future with. I haven't done anything to you, Rachel. You did this to yourself. Both of you did. I walked out and sat in my car for a moment. My new car, a BMW M5 I'd bought with the first profits from my direct licensing deals. The company was doing better than ever. Without Jake's overhead and mismanagement, my margins had tripled. Rivertech, now renamed River Software Solutions, had 38 employees. We'd rebuilt quickly once clients realized they were getting better service at lower prices. I'd hired Jennifer Park, a brilliant COO who handled business operations while I focused on what I was good at, building software. I'd also started dating again. Nothing serious yet, a few dinners with a woman named Sophie who worked at a coffee roaster downtown. She knew nothing about my past except that I was divorced, and I liked it that way. My phone buzzed, a LinkedIn message from David Torres, the former board member. Daniel, I owe you an apology. I didn't realize how bad Jake's fraud was until we did the full audit. He stole from you for years. You had every right to destroy him. Respect for how you handled it. If you ever need advisory help, call me. I smiled. Word was getting around in Austin's tech community about what had really happened. Jake was radioactive now. No one would hire him, no one would partner with him, his reputation completely destroyed. Last I heard, he'd taken a sales job at a small software company in San Antonio for $65,000 a year. From Tesla to used Toyota. From C-Home penthouse to a studio apartment. From tech startup founder to mid-level sales drone. Rachel was working as a barista at a Starbucks in South Austin. Her event planning career was done. Too many burned bridges, too many people who'd heard about the affair. I should have felt guilty. Maybe I should have shown mercy, taken the high road, been the bigger person.
But every time I thought about feeling bad, I remembered walking into my house with roses. I remembered Jake buttoning his shirt behind my wife. I remembered 8 months of lies while they destroyed everything I'd built. No, I didn't feel guilty at all. 6 months after the divorce, I sold River Software Solutions to a Silicon Valley firm for $47 million. I kept 30% equity and stayed on as CTO. The rest of the money went into investments, a new house with a view of downtown Austin, and a charitable foundation supporting tech education for underprivileged kids. Jake had tried to steal my company and my wife. Instead, he lost everything while I became more successful than I'd ever been. Sometimes people ask if I'd do anything differently, if I'd show more mercy or take the high road. I tell them the same thing every time. I gave Jake and Rachel exactly what they deserved. Nothing more, nothing less. And I sleep perfectly well at night.